Now let's take a look at the Saturday college football tailgate party. Critical information and a free pick from Joe Duffy's picks at offshoreinsiders.com. 84-50 since the preseason in football. Look, you are either with us or you're subsidizing us and our clients. You make the choice. 3-1 in the NBA. 4 college football wise guy plays for Saturday. 3 college football majors. NBA is possible. Offshoreinsiders.com. Now let's take a look at some critical news and notes for this Saturday. Central Florida versus Navy, brought to you by offshoreinsiders.com. Central Florida has the nation's leading against the spread margin at plus 19.9. They are perfect 5-0 against the spread. Again, we are talking, some of you will know it as sweat barometer, but it's essentially how much a team covers by or does not cover by. Syracuse and Miami of Florida, double-digit dogs off a win as an underdog to a team that was ranked in the top 8 or 7-3 against the spread. That would favor Syracuse. Similar angle since 1995, road teams off of home wins as underdogs of 20 or more are 7-3 against the spread. That also favors the Orange Men. Syracuse and Florida State. Let's try this again. Louisville and Florida State. Louisville wide receiver Seth Dawkins, who had 23 receptions in 6 games but missed the last game. The BYU is questionable. Fresno State and San Diego State. Fresno State 5-0-1 with the second best against the spread margin in the nation at plus 16.4. By the way, it's the best spread margin of teams that played at least 6 games is Central Florida. Remember, because of Hurricane Irma, had some games postponed. Tennessee and Alabama. Tennessee quarterback Quentin Dormandy, who started the first 5 games, is probable, but he's not going to start. Jarrett Garantano, who replaced him as a starter last week, was expected to start anyway. If you do like our information, please literally like it. If you're watching it on YouTube or Facebook, the likes will help us in search engine optimization. And if you're listening to us on, say, Stitcher or iTunes, please give us a very positive review, a 5-star review. That will help us, and that tells us you want more information like this. USC and Notre Dame. USC is 6-1 straight up, 1-6 against the spread. Now, those of you who have been with us for years in the NBA, you know that we have used what we call our dichotomous straight up and ATS theory. What it essentially says if a team is winning straight up but not covering, or if conversely it's a bad team that is covering but losing straight up, they have dichotomous streaks, you go with the spread streak. That is a way to measure overvalued and undervalued teams. However, we do have to test that theory. And in this situation, it doesn't necessarily seem to apply. Teams with a winning percentage of better than 80% yet on a 4-game or more spread skid are actually 40-21 against the spread if they are not home favorites. Now, USC, just their 3rd road game of the year. Sam Darnold, 6 touchdowns and 1 interception the last 2 games. Some might say he's got motivation to really have a big game here. He can re-enter the Heisman race. He's kind of dropped on the outskirts. Last we checked at some of the top sports books, such as those featured at offshoreinsiders.com, thoroughly vetted, he's dropped down the 6th or 7th in the Heisman race. Notre Dame, though, their only loss was by 1 point to a Georgia team, one of the top teams in the country, and all their wins were routes. They're outscoring teams, the Irish are, by a 40-16.5 margin. Compare that to USC, only outscoring teams 34.4 to 23.7. USC, remember, they won a game in triple overtime to Texas, a 1-point win to Utah. And look, they trailed 21-7 in the second half. So USC could very easily have a couple more losses. And again, even against that California game, they pulled away at the end, but struggled against a so-so team. Notre Dame running back Josh Adams, though, is averaging 9 yards per carry, 776 yards rushing. He's a guy who could probably touch the ball a little bit more. In fact, he's a guy who can enter the Heisman race with a big game here. Irish getting 6.9 yards per carry to teams that normally allow just 4.4. So USC's got to stop the run here. And USC's defensive line, not really their strength because of injury. So Notre Dame could definitely have some success on the ground. It's an off week, for the Irish. They're coming off an off week. Brandon Wimbush, their quarterback, did rest his injured right foot. It seems that the the bye came at a good time for Notre Dame. Ranked home team is off of a bye, by the way, 96-64 against the spread. That favors Notre Dame. That is your free pick from Joe Duffy's picks at offshoreinsiders.com. We're going to go with Notre Dame, but we got more great intel for you. Oregon and UCLA. UCLA is the number 2 over team in the nation, going over 5-1 by an average of 13.7 points per game. Purdue and Rutgers. Purdue a plus 15.1 against the spread margin, covering 5 of 6 games. Again, some of you know that as the sweat barometer. It's the same thing. Kansas and TCU. Kansas 1-5 with a nation's worst minus 14.2 ATS margin. TCU as a plus 7.5 ATS margin. So this is the biggest spread margin mismatch in the country. And teams with at least a 21-point difference in spread margin in game 7 or later when laying double digits are actually 55-32 against the spread, and that would favor TCU. BYU and East Carolina. BYU is the only 0-7 spread team in the nation. Worst team in the nation as far as pure spread record is concerned, and they have missed by an average of 11.9 points per game. But teams on a 7-game or worse spread streak, listen to this, folks. Teams on a 7-game or worse spread streak, 11-1-1 since January the 2nd, 2012. Buffalo and Miami of Ohio. Buffalo, the only 7-0 ATS team in the nation, though, by a modest 6.1 points per game. So they are barely covering, but they keep covering. Louisiana Monroe versus South Alabama. ULM is going over 5-1 by 20.8 points per game. That's tops in the nation. Wake Forest versus Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech running back Kervontae Benson is probable with a leg injury. Pretty good running back, 516 rushing yards on 5.7 yards per carry. Arizona State and Utah, this could be a big return of Tyler Huntley, a quarterback for Utah. They need him after dropping 2 straight. He is questionable after practicing this week. 88 for 120, 73.3 completion percentage, 6 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Now, double-digit dogs off of a win as an underdog to a top 8 ranked team. It actually applies twice this week. They're 7-3 against the spread. That would favor ASU. The biggest consensus moves, look, we have several sources that we use for consensus. Offshore, Las Vegas, and some outlaw sources. And there are only 2 that kind of cross through everything, West Virginia and UAB, the 2 biggest consensus. Now, again, if you pay attention only to offshore, only to Vegas, and only to the outlaw sources, you would have more. But the 2 that really do cross everything is West Virginia and UAB. Some of the biggest line moves, Arizona State is minus 3.5 to California. They opened up at plus 1.5. Georgia Tech now minus 4 to Wake Forest after opening up at minus 8. Northwestern minus 2 to Iowa. They opened at plus 2. San Diego State minus 7.5 to Fresno. They opened at minus 11. Look, if you do love information like this, subscribe to us on YouTube. A lot of you are watching this on YouTube, but maybe you're hearing our podcast or watching or seeing this on Facebook, but it's youtube.com/offshoreinsiders with an S. Subscribe to us there or on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, and again, please literally give us a like if you do like this, depending on where you're watching it, or if it's a podcast. Give us a positive review, 5-star if you really like it, and that tells us you want more stuff like this, and you're going to help us get exposure in search engines. The search engines like likes, and why wouldn't they? Make sure you visit offshoreinsiders.com, not only for the best picks, but the best sports books. We get thoroughly vetted sports books like MyBookie, Intertops, Bet Online, Sports Betting, Bovada, and, for example, at 5 Dimes. And again, if you sign up like at 5 Dimes, on their pull-down menu, they're going to say, where did you hear of us? And please put the offshoreinsiders.com sports betting podcast. Anyway, we are going to have some Sunday picks, so make sure you subscribe to us. We'll have Sunday NFL as well.